Alright, on the Spread Aviation whiteboard of Ground School Excellence, we have an airfoil drawn with a couple of pieces labeled the trailing edge and the leading edge. The imaginary line that connects the two together is called the chord line, and the chord line interacts with the relative wind to form the angle of attack. Now, the relative wind is probably the most misunderstood of these concepts, because the relative wind is the airflow that is parallel and opposite the flight path, and it moves with the aircraft. Now, the textbooks generally draw it as on the horizontal, but airplanes don't always just move in the horizontal. So, if I grab my little model airplane here, not all airplanes move through the sky like this all the time. The L-39 here is an aerobatic military trainer, so it could be flying this way. Well, where's the relative wind when the aircraft is doing this? Well, it's still parallel and opposite the flight path. So if this is the flight path, vertical up, the relative wind is vertical down, and those two cross each other. Now, what I see a lot of people confuse is the difference or the similarities between angle of attack and pitch attitude. Here we have the L-39 in a very low pitch attitude, 0 degrees, and here we have the L-39 in a very high pitch attitude, 90 degrees. It's vertically up. Well, which one has the higher angle of attack? Well, Rob, you're saying that's unfair. We don't know what the relative wind is because we can't tell what the flight path is. You haven't given us any motion to the aircraft. Okay, let me add some motion. Here we have the aircraft in the very low pitch attitude. And if I add this flight path, oh, the flight path is this way, 90 degrees to the pitch attitude. Well, that means that the relative wind is now here. And that's a very, very high angle of attack. Now we take the airplane, we put it 90 degrees nose up, and we give it the flight path. Ah, so the aircraft is traveling vertical up, which means that the flight path is here, and the relative wind is here. Well, what's the difference in angle between these two? It's 0. So an airplane at 0 angle of attack is actually making 0 lift. Well, in the vertical, that's kind of good because we don't want the airplane to do this. We want it to go up vertically. However, we could be at a level pitch attitude with a very high angle of attack, and the airplane is falling vertically down. I'm going to show a video in a little bit of a maneuver called the falling leaf stall, and that's exactly what's happening. The airplane is holding a relatively flat pitch attitude, but we're coming down very close to vertically. It's still kind of translating forward a little bit, but it's at a very, very high angle of attack. In fact, it is beyond the critical angle of attack. Okay, so now we're going to do the falling leaf. We're at 4,000. My flight controls, stay on it with your flight controls. Going to line up with the beach. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm doing good.
Okay, I'm going to power down now. Get the airplane nice and slow. And notice the stick's coming back, the nose, we're just keeping it straight ahead. She'll go nose down here. There we go. So now we're using coordinated rudder and aileron inputs to try and keep the airplane straight.
Okay, I feel how you were doing that.
Yep. I got the stick buried all the way back.
All the way back.
And she's bucking and honking and doing all kinds of stuff. There she took a big bite out of it, and I made a big aggressive move to keep her out. Okay? But yeah, I mean, this is the Air France 447 approach to the ocean.
Exactly.
All right? As far as the bumpy road goes, besides the bumpiness of this, what does it feel like?
Rocky Road.
Well, it just feels like you're sitting in a chair, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a 1G. It's 1G.
I see what you mean. It doesn't feel like you're falling
out. But we're also doing 1,200.
1,200 feet per minute down?
Yep.
That's pretty impressive.
And you look out to the side there. That's pretty funny.
Yep. Now, the critical angle of attack is the point at which any further increase in angle, decrease in speed, or increase in load factor or G-force will result in a stall. Now, we as the pilot are in control of that angle of attack. Let me put a graph on the board here for you. On the bottom, we're going to have angle of attack, and on the top, we're going to have coefficient of lift. Now, we haven't really talked about that very much, so let me just write out here the lift equation. Lift equals coefficient of lift times 1/2 density times velocity squared times the area of the wing. Now, we can't change the area, we can't change the density of the air because that's temperature and pressure, and velocity is not one that we can change instantaneously and in very large amounts to suddenly create a bunch of G-force or lift. Okay, so if we graph this out for this airfoil, which is asymmetrical, let me get a nice bright color here that shows up. As angle of attack goes up, coefficient of lift goes up. So this being a direct equation, as any one value goes up on the right-hand side of the equal sign, lift goes up on the left-hand side of the equal sign. This is where math and paying attention to it in school really pays off. As angle of attack goes up, however, the ability for the air to stick to the surface of the wing starts to get reduced over time, and we get a decrease in performance till eventually it finally drops off and it peaks out up here. This position is called CL max, or the critical angle of attack, which I just described. Any further increase in angle, decrease in velocity, or increase in G is going to cause the aircraft to stall. Now, stall is bad. Everything bad happens over on this side of the critical angle of attack. Stability of the airplane goes down, our ability to arrest descent rates go down, the wing stops flying, it stops holding us up, and gravity begins to win, because as you can see here, if we continue on this side of the graph, coefficient of lift is now going down until not much angle later, the wing has completely given up its ability to try and hold us in the air. Well, this is not good. Now, the pilot is in control of the angle of attack. The stick, the yoke, the side stick, whatever your pitch controller is, whatever's manipulating the elevators, is directly in control of the angle of attack. So if we translate this graph into stick motion, moving to the right is pulling, and we're going to say that that's bad. Well, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good. I mean, we have to pull. We pull when we take off. But if we stall, it's because we, the pilot, pulled too far back. And again, in that falling leaf stall video, that stick is all the way back. An airplane is upset. And we recover by pushing. You must push to move this way on the graph. You can enact no recovery if the wing is not flying.
Okay, so big inputs to your flight controls.
Yeah, my flight controls.
Keep this going, okay?
All right,
Keep
I'll
this
see if I
salad
can
going.
do this. So stick back.
Yep, stick all the way back.
Oh.
Keep it back, keep it back, keep it back.
Keep it back, keep it back.
Yep, it's just got a lot of authority.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
There it is.
You go. Good. Stay in it. Yep, there you go. Left foot. There's 3,000 recover. Relax the back pressure. That's it. She's flying. That's all you had to do was relax.
Yeah.
So, if we are approaching the stall, we need to avoid that at all costs. We need to prevent exceeding the critical angle of attack. Now, the critical angle of attack is actually good. It's getting you the maximum amount of lift that your wing can give you for any combination of density, velocity, and wing size. However, exceeding that critical angle of attack, now the wing is no longer working for us. So we need to push forward on that pitch controller, reducing the angle of attack below critical. And really, you don't have to get it that far below the critical angle of attack for the wing to start flying again. It happens rather quickly. However, the more time you spend beyond the critical angle of attack, the more the flight path has degraded to vertical down, and the more pitch attitude we will have to change to get the aircraft below the critical angle of attack. So the sooner you can correct this, the less pitch attitude you need to change.
Keep the stick coming back.
It's a lot more sensitive than you would
It's an aerobatic airplane.
Yeah.
It just changes in pressure.
Up.
Yep. Keep the stick coming back. There you go. Relax.
Oh.
That's it.
That's
She's
the
already.
break.
Yeah, she's already flying.
Sometimes I can't tell if you're doing something or if that was the...
I'm trying to keep my hands off it.
I clicked that.
So the stall is one of those things that we as the pilot are directly in control of. Now, In the case of the Boeing 737 MAX that we're currently seeing issues with, the angle of attack indicator on the outside of the aircraft is sending faulty information to the computers, or the computers are misunderstanding the information that the angle of attack is giving it, and it's messing with the flight control system. However, the aircraft does still respond to the pilot's inputs. It comes down to then the pilot actually taking command of that aircraft and making sure that they manage that angle of attack to keep the airplane flying. Now that may mean pushing the nose down from whatever up attitude it's in, but not necessarily pushing that nose all the way down towards the ground. All you need to do is get the angle of attack below the critical and that wing starts flying again. Now, if we are talking about the 737, it does have a swept wing which presents its own stall characteristics which aren't all that friendly. However, the same laws apply. The laws of aerodynamics still apply. And if you get below the critical angle of attack, that wing starts flying again. So, it's possible that these airplanes will still fly. It's going to come down to pilot training. It's going to come down to pilot skill and their reaction after the bad thing happens. Airplanes don't stall on their own. They usually stall because we screwed something up. In the case of Air France 447, that pilot, who was flying at the time, was holding full nose up. And he even said, "I'm holding full up. Why won't it go up?" Pinning the aircraft beyond the critical angle of attack and not allowing for a recovery.
All right, so here we have a case of Navy pilots, and they're some of the best pilots in the world, in an airplane that's way too big, coming off the deck, way too slow, and you can see it descend out of sight there. And we're expecting a splash. The crew is running on the deck. They're already going, oh, we need to initiate rescue. We're going to have pilots in water. We're going to have to get divers. We're going to have to get the rescue helicopter, and we're going to have to recover these guys. And from the deck, this airplane flies away. Now, if these pilots had panic pulled and brought that yoke all the way back, that airplane would have stalled. However, they held the yoke far enough back to maintain the critical angle of attack, get every ounce of lift they could out of their airplane, and at full military power, which is what you apply after you catch the wire on the aircraft carrier, the engines were doing everything they could to add energy to the scenario, to the situation, and get the airplane climbing. So the wing was doing everything it could, the engines were doing everything that they could, and the pilots didn't try to screw that up. It's fantastic, fantastic airmanship from these pilots. This is some excellent, excellent work, and an example of, hey, they went right to the edge, but they didn't go beyond. You can see the pitch attitude of the aircraft pickup as well. If it had gone any further, however, the results may have been significantly different.
Now, we're going to find out what happened with all of these incidents and accidents with the 737 MAX. The NTSB is going to investigate because at this point now Americans have died. And they were probably going to investigate before too. But man, what a terrible way to learn something.